Welcome back to another powerful episode of the Dr. O Show. I'm your host, Dr. Connor Oliveri, founder and CEO of Elevate Health. Every week, we'll be bringing you insightful information and inspiration to help you achieve your full potential regarding your health, life, and business. If you enjoy the message we are promoting in this podcast, we would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a rating and review on the platform you are listening to. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the future episodes that embody our core values of enhancing ourselves, empowering others, and evolving our community. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Dr. O Show, episode 6. We have the awesome Nick Friedman with us today. Nick, pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we get into it, the topic for today is owning a 9-figure company, but not just that. Our guest here, Nick, has accomplished quite a lot. To give a little bit of introduction on him, renowned entrepreneur. He's been in TV shows, been in movies, performed on Netflix, has a company that has over 200 franchises, $300 million in annual sales. He's appeared on CNBC, Fox, CNN, multiple different, I guess you could call it news networks, been in magazines, and so forth. But we could read your resume. I'll link that in the bio for people to read. But to get a little bit into you, man, I want to hear a little bit about your upbringing and your childhood.
Yeah, so, grew up in Washington, D.C., kind of a traditional upbringing. My dad was an eye doctor. My mom was a school teacher. So even though we were in D.C., it had nothing to do with politics, but it was always sort of in or around us. But I was always brought up to follow the more traditional career path. You work hard in school, you get good grades, you get a degree in college, you get a job, and you kind of move up the corporate ladder. So getting to what we're doing now, the College Hunks Hauling Junk business was certainly never on the radar, that's for sure. But had an older sister. She was only 18 months older than me, but seemed about 18 years older than me just because she was always the mature one, always the one that was excelling in school. And I could never sit still. I was always kind of getting in trouble, a little bit restless. And so looking back, I think those were some of my entrepreneurial tendencies wanting to surface. But at the time, I was just sort of labeled a kid who couldn't sit still or wouldn't listen to the teacher.
Isn't that all of us, though? I feel like
right.
Everybody who's a business owner has a sense of urgency.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of urgency. One of the things I always preach now in business and to entrepreneurs is you want to have urgency of effort, but patience for the results, because certainly the results don't happen overnight, and that urgency can manifest into unhealthy behavior or just unhealthy emotional state. And so having the patience of the results but the urgency of the effort, I think, is the right combination to settle on. Already
just throwing out curveballs, man. Listen, today's just more so about me getting to know you, our audience getting to know you. So having said that, you started this company at how old?
We started the company unofficially the summer before my senior year of college, so I would have been 21 years old at that time. And then
where did you go to college?
So I went to a small school in California called Pomona College. My business partner, he went to University of Miami in Florida. We had gone to high school together, so we met in the 10th grade. We called ourselves partners in crime in high school, and then now we're partners in business for almost 20 years. But went to college in California, and then during summer vacations, we were home trying to figure out what to do, and it was actually his mom had a furniture store, and she had a beat-up cargo van, and she said, why don't you guys go take the van, move people's furniture? So we credit her not only with giving us the van, but also the name. She was like, you guys could be like College Hunks who haul junk. And we kind of looked at each other and then laughed about it, and that's all we did is we put it on computer, print out flyers, saw that people thought the name was catchy, they had a need for the service. So that was the light bulb moment for me is, okay, well, this wasn't something we learned in college or high school, but seems like it'd be a way to make some money and have fun doing it.
Did you ever start any other businesses prior to that? Were you kind of just like the knick-knack stuff, mowing lawns, that sort of thing?
Yeah, more of the typical cliche, knocking on doors to shovel snow, knocking on doors to sell knickknacks, like you
Always
said.
Hustling a little bit.
Exactly. And never found something I could sort of settle all my energy behind until we sort of stumbled on this. And I always tell people it's nothing that, we kind of invented from scratch here. It wasn't like Facebook or Google or TikTok. It was something pretty simple, trucks and labor, but we put a really creative spin on the brand, a really intentional focus on the client and employee experience and ultimately the franchise model. And that's kind of been what's allowed us to succeed over the years.
But this is one of those things where it wasn't forced. It just kind of organically came together.
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, I got a lot of energy. I was not passionate about moving and hauling, but I got a lot of energy that sort of burst out when we started pursuing this idea, and I could sort of picture the brand being in other cities, and I could sort of see it blossoming into a bigger business. And so I think that vision and that energy is what sort of propelled me to get behind it and start pushing it. But you're right, it sort of just evolved from a summer gig to actually a business plan our senior year of college. And then when we graduated, we actually had regular jobs for a very brief period before we said, hey, let's take the business plan off the shelf and make it a year-round business.
So you started that, and you got it to the point where eventually you guys pitched it on Shark Tank, right? And I know you talk, there's, I'm sure, a lot of interviews of you talking about what that was like. Can you kind of give our listeners a little bit of how that went?
Yeah, so even before Shark Tank, we were still doing all the work ourselves, and we'd be driving the truck, answering the phone, hauling the junk, and we actually went and got an 800 number and put it on the back of our truck. It was routed to our cell phone, so people would call to complain about erratic driving, and we'd be in the driver's seat pretending like we weren't, saying, hey, thanks for reporting that to us. We'll, fire those guys when they get back to the office. So probably fired ourselves 3 or 4 times that first summer. Then we learned about franchising and how to work on the business, not just in it. And we saw an ad in Inc. magazine, probably the second summer we were in business, and it said, looking for entrepreneurs to pitch a business idea for a TV show. That's all it said. And this was the pilot episode of Shark Tank, of season 1, episode 1, is what it ultimately became. So we already knew we wanted to start franchising the business. We already knew we wanted to start getting the name out there. This sounded like a cool way to leverage publicity. And we had already sort of experienced a little bit of the power of publicity. And so we said, okay, let's pitch a business idea. And we were going to actually pitch a sister company. We were going to call it College Foxes Packing Boxes, which thank goodness we never pursued.
Oh, man.
It wouldn't have worked. But the Sharks actually wanted an investment. They were willing to make an investment, but they wanted equity in College Hunks. So it actually kind of worked out for us because we were able to talk about our existing business, which gave it some exposure. And we got an offer from Robert Herjavec, which at the time was probably a very fair and reasonable offer, but we weren't really in the need of money, and we didn't realize that these sharks were going to turn into television celebrities, over a decade in the making. And so we turned it down, and it was a great experience, but it was exhausting. We had never pitched or asked for capital before, and to have to do it with cameras swirling all around us, and Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary telling us that we were greedy pigs.
How nervous were you?
Super nervous. It felt like I had been in a boxing match when I came out of it, and it felt like we'd been out there for an hour, but it was probably a 12-minute segment that kind of unedited was what they ended up sharing on television.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know that there's so much more to the kind of that process, and then you only us as the viewers only get the 12 minutes, and they chop it and they cut it and they make it look a certain way. I can only imagine how things went down in there, and I mean just even having the opportunity to go do that, you placed yourself in the right place at the right time, or maybe it was just kind of one of those God things where you were just in the right place at the right time, and your path was directed to there. I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those paths, as I look back on kind of the journey of where we've been, have been, kind of surreal to see how they've opened up. And, more recently, we were on Undercover Boss on CBS. So we've gone from Shark Tank episode 1 to the most recent season of Undercover Boss. I think probably the first business owners to be founders asking for money on Shark Tank to then being CEOs giving out money on Undercover Boss. But that Undercover Boss experience took, I think, 10 years to manifest. We had applied when it first came out on the air, and at the time we were too small. Mm-hmm. And then we kept following up, and then the show got canceled, and then they pivoted to Celebrity Undercover Boss, and they didn't think we were celebrities enough, which they were right. And so then they came back on, and then we got selected but got bumped, and so that was like 10 years in the making of persistence, and like I said earlier, the patience to allow something like that to come together. So a lot of looking back and seeing how some of those doors open and those lucky breaks happen, and being in the right position to take advantage of them when they do present themselves.
But you were proactive about it too. You were consistently always putting yourself out there. And I don't know, maybe was there somebody that you had on your team that was applying for these different things, or was it you being proactive about it? Was your partner being proactive about it?
I would say it was primarily my partner and I. They were very intentional. At the beginning, we kind of considered ourselves savvy marketers. It was like, hey, let's leverage the power of publicity and take advantage of getting our name out there. I mean, we're a consumer brand. Anybody can go get moving trucks and put up a website. So we've got a catchy name. How do we get our trucks out there? How do we get people aware of us? You know, it might have evolved a little bit to shameless promoters, but I always say if you're not going to promote yourself or your company, then who will? Especially at the beginning, you've got to be willing to put yourself out there. Maybe it evolved. I joke. So since Shark Tank, we've been on like 10 different reality shows on 10 different networks. So,
now, I was going to read that in the bio, but I didn't when you said just cut it down.
Yeah, maybe you got a little bit carried away. You know, maybe went from savvy, marketers to shameless promoters to, dare I say, publicity whores. I don't know, but we've along the way we've been able to continue to just, I think, present our brand in a positive light and in a way that it creates awareness, because if somebody's thinking about moving or hauling junk and they go do a Google search and we pop up with 20 other companies, if they happen to remember us because they saw one of those episodes or they saw our trucks on the road or what have you, then it's going to be more inclined to select us. So that was the idea behind it.
Let me tell you, there's no shame in that promoting game, bro. I mean, every time I drive around the bend coming off of 60 by the airport and I come on to Kennedy Boulevard, I saw that F-350 just chilling on the corner.
Yeah, we call that parketing. If the trucks are like a moving billboard, if they're not out in the visible eye, then nobody can see it. So
absolutely. So there's a lot of moving companies out there, right? There's hundreds of them, and I mean, there's guys just like yourselves that are doing exactly what you guys started and have been doing. To take a company and grow it to the magnitude that you have, right, of a 9-figure annual revenue, that takes a lot of, I think, delegation. It takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of commitment and consistency. I want you to give me a little bit of insight into how did you like track that growth process, because it's so hard to, I think, you hit a goal and you hit an achievement, like to get it to that magnitude. Obviously, it's taken you 10 years, right?
20
years,
I call it a 20-year overnight success.
A 20-year overnight success, right? But what did that process look like? Like, what can you contribute to getting your numbers to that magnitude?
Yeah, a combination of, the old cliche adages of persistence, patience, perseverance. I mean, those 100% have to be there. But we, I think, never stopped being students of getting better and improving ourselves. And so whether that be surrounding ourselves with mentors, whether it be reading books and then trying to apply what that book had to our business, obviously recruiting amazing people, surrounding the company with amazing team members, amazing mentors and professional advisors, and it's almost like an accumulation of things that starts to compound on itself. So the bigger the business got, the more sophisticated it got, the more impact that it could have to continue to build upon itself. And so we set our vision out very early on that we wanted to be a national iconic brand. We set up our core values based on the book Good to Great by Jim Collins and used that as the framework of the type of organization we wanted to become, the type of people we wanted to bring into our organization. And then it was just more about executing and, being willing to do the marketing and being willing to make sure that we provide a good service for our team, and for the clients who ultimately hire us, so it can turn into repeat referral business and reputation online. So, it's just this continuous, I think, execution and compounding on itself over time. And, 2 decades is a long time for that type of effort. And that you continue to put in that type of effort over time, it's going to produce sustained results.
Okay, so 2-part question here. All right. First question is going to be surrounding of, now that you're at where you're at revenue-wise, do you feel like it's not that hard to achieve a 9-figure revenue, and that there are hundreds of thousands of other companies out there that are doing that, right? And you were naive to that prior? Or do you think more so it's actually extremely hard to get to that point, and it's something that is almost unachievable, and you have that kind of 0.001% or 0.000, I don't even know what the number is for that, right? So that's my first question.
So honestly, I think getting our business to where it is now is probably the hardest thing I've ever done and ever will do. So I don't want to like sugarcoat it to make it be like anybody can go out and do this, right? Because, if information was all we needed about how to do it, we'd all be billionaires. We'd all have the 6-pack abs because the information is out there. But I think of some of those intangible things of the late nights, or just, being able to power through, or get that lucky break with that, amazing employee who ended up just transforming his or her department, or that lucky TV show break. So all those pieces to the puzzle had to fit together for us to get here. So I actually think it's going to be, I hate to say it, easier for us to sort of level up to the next level from where we are now than it would be to try to take another business from zero to where we are, because it's the law of motion, motion and momentum, right? When something is moving and it continues to propel and compound on itself, the accelerated momentum continues to increase. But if you're taking something from a complete stop, meaning it's not moving at all, and you're trying to push that flywheel forward and get it to inch forward and inch forward, that's the hard part. That's the difficult part. And when you're a startup, many times it just falls on our own shoulders. Like when I was driving the truck and answering the phone and hauling the junk and wondering, when will I ever be able to get out of this cycle? So not to say it's impossible to do. I think, I wouldn't want to have to do it again now that I'm 40 and I've got kids and I don't have maybe as much tolerance for that pain than I did in the early days of just being willing to, go head down and get after it. But at the same time, I would say I've got, aside from, maybe finding balance with my family and my life, I've got less competing priorities. Like there was always, wanting to go out and burn the candle in the nighttime and then wake up and have to work. And, I don't have the energy to do that either. So now I can kind of settle in and create a routine and focus in on trying to, empower and inspire our team to take our business to the next level.
I love that. That's, and that's so true. And you hear everybody say it all the time. It's easier to make, $10 million after you have that first million than it is to go from 0 to $1 million. It's like that back end, just like you were saying, that motion.
But the reality is that that's probably true, but it's, that's not very encouraging.
It still takes a lot of consistency.
But that's not very encouraging for the folks like us who started with nothing, that wanted to, at least we had the cargo van and some encouragement from our parents, but you're still starting somewhere, and everybody starts at sort of a different point on the starting blocks. And so I think it's just a matter of putting your head down, being willing to take the risk, being willing to fight through the hard times, surrounding yourself with great people and great processes, and then eventually you'll see results.
This is one of the best podcasts yet, man.
Oh, thank you.
I love that. All right. So now my second part to that question is going to be, you've been an entrepreneur. How did you stay focused on one thing over 20 years? And I don't know if you have other things that you're involved in, but I can speak for myself. I have 3 different companies right now, Elevate Health being one of them. I have a telemedicine company is the second one. And then I'm starting a third concept. I don't want to go ahead and reveal too much to what that is, but I've got a lot of ideas and I want to act on them. And as I'm growing as a business person, I see how other opportunities or other things might be a little bit more scalable, a simpler business model, a little bit more sustainable, subscription-based, whatever that may be, to maybe create a better exit for me in the future compared to something that's like a one-off, facility like this in Hyde Park. So, how did you stay focused on just your company,
So I can relate to everything you just said because, I self-diagnosed myself with entrepreneurial ADD, which I like to say stands for all damn day. You just, you keep going, you're chasing the next shiny idea, next shiny object. And it does take a lot of discipline and focus. Probably should have mentioned that, to see any idea kind of through to its full potential. And so I think what the challenge is that we have to kind of discipline ourselves as entrepreneurs is know when to make a small bet to see, what might work, and then when to really push the chips in and go, I'm going to put those other ideas to the side. Those are great ideas, but I'm going to focus on this one, maybe 2 ideas to really pursue it. And there's a book I read called Ask Who, Not How, which talks about how, the ideas anybody can come up with. And the thing that gives us as entrepreneurs juice is coming up with those creative ideas. They're great, but you still need somebody to execute on the idea. And whether that's ourselves or somebody else that we can empower, a partner, a team member, what have you, to be able to pursue and see that idea to fruition. And so we were able to get College Hunks to a point where we were able to hire a brand president who's actually way more technically savvy than my co-founder and I, who's way more financially sound than we are, probably a more logic-based leader. We're much more kind of knee-jerk, emotional-based leaders. And so we were able to remove ourselves from the day-to-day of College Hunks, still be facilitators, still be cheerleaders and brand champions and idea guys, but that's allowed us to then pursue some other opportunities outside of College Hunks. But even when I look at the opportunities on my plate, if I put enough energy and effort behind College Hunks, the compound effect is going to be 10 times more than going to try and start something from scratch. So then it just becomes, okay, where do I want to invest my time? Where do I want to invest my energy? And where am I going to get the most return from that? And there is a tendency to want to chase the next shiny object or think that the next idea is going to be easier or more scalable. I mean, we went through that in the early days of College Hunks where I was like, oh, moving, it's transactional. We got to chase every move, chase every junk haul. There's maybe a subscription idea or maybe a B2B concept instead of B2C. And so we would chase other ideas. And, there's a lot that sit on the shelf. There's some that we're involved in today that have done pretty well, but not to the scale or magnitude of College Hunks. And I think it's about finding balance, but focus and doubling down on your effort and energy of what's working is going to be the key to see it continue to build.
And also knowing when to close the door.
That too. I mean, if something's, the market will tell you whether something's working or not. Like one time we were actually contemplating changing our company name because I was like, maybe our name is holding us back. Maybe, people think College Hunks and they think it's too quirky or silly, or it's not, we can't do commercial moves because of the name or what have you. So we actually started down this path of exploring, do we change the name altogether? And this is when we already had maybe a dozen or 24 franchises and the business was not highly profitable, but it was generating revenue. And one of my mentors said, look, the market has already told you that the name works. Doesn't matter. Maybe you think you could do more than you're doing now, but the market has embraced your brand. Mm-hmm. Whether that's the TV shows or the clients or the franchise owners, your brand is working. So the amount of cost and energy to try to backtrack and reroute is going to be not worth it without knowing for sure it's going to work if you do reroute it. And so that was enough for me to say, okay, well, what I've got is working. Maybe it's not working as fast as I want it to. Maybe it's not working as much as I'd like it to. But if I keep building on this initial foundation, eventually it will work, and eventually, it'll break through. And that's kind of what's happened here.
Did you ever think that College Hunks was going to fail?
I would never say I had thoughts of failure. I had some doubts from time to time. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, when we first started franchising the company, this was in like 08, 09. We moved down to Tampa, Florida. And of course, we all know that that's around the time the housing market crashed and we went through a 5-year recession. So if you had to pick the best time to start a home services business, 08, 09, or start franchising a home services business, 08, 09 might not have been the best time. But it was probably the best thing that happened to us as business owners, because prior to that, when there was like this boom or bubble, if you want to call it that, all we had to do was put our trucks out on the road or put our signs out and our phone was ringing. Mm-hmm. Now, all of a sudden, it felt like we were pulling the anchor through the sand and the wind was in our face. And that, I think, built this resiliency muscle that said, okay, well, we're just going to keep grinding through it. We're going to keep grinding through it. We're going to keep marching through it. And so, now since then, of course, we've been through a pandemic. We're going through whatever this, climate looks like right now. And I'm sure we'll face many other challenges ahead. But I think building up that resiliency muscle was critical for us, especially because it happened so early on. We didn't, thankfully have a lot of gas in the tank to burn through. It was just kind of our own emotional and mental energy to keep plowing forward.
Absolutely. I mean, if you guys could have made it through 08 and 09, you could make it through anything at that point. So when you guys got out of that, I'm sure it was just like, boys, girls, we all did this. We can, crush anything that we set our minds to now.
Yeah. I mean, that was the idea. And there were moments of fear during COVID where I was like, oh, crap, are we going to have to shut down and lose everything that we ever worked for? Yeah. And of course, thankfully, we had a kind of a post-COVID boom with everybody going crazy with the housing market. And now interest rates are up, so things are slowing down. There's a deceleration. So I always like to say, the external factors you think of those as like the rain or the snow during a football game. All the teams have to play through the same conditions. It may not be as easy to throw the ball or, kick field goals in those conditions, but like it is when it's sunny and, no breeze or whatever, mm-hmm. But we still got to be able to execute or modify our game plan or keep playing. And eventually the skies will clear and things will change up.
So at what point did you guys decide to become a franchise? And did you go out and hire a franchise attorney, a corporate lawyer that kind of set up that whole structure together for you guys? Or did you really, set that up yourself and do your own research? And like, what did that look like?
Yeah, that was that was actually one of those maybe just entrepreneurial ideas that we thought was going to make things easier, because we were having such, challenges of building a local moving and hauling business. We thought franchising, to be honest with you, was maybe a more glamorized way of growing, which couldn't have been further away from the truth, because franchising is I call it a get rich slow program. You've got to develop a critical mass of 50 to 100 franchisees. They've got to be successful. You've got to have infrastructure and support systems to not just sell, but also help the franchisees grow. And so we got into it, I would say, a little bit with blinders on, thinking like, hey,
it's a tedious process.
A very tedious process. And so we kind of just got into it a little bit, with blinders on, and we said, okay, well, we're down this path. Let's just keep marching. And that's when we started surrounding ourselves with well-versed franchise consultants, mentors, people in the franchise space who had done it, who had built businesses greater than ours. But I actually spend 9 out of 10 conversations that I have with people who reach out to me about franchising, I'll spend trying to convince them not to franchise as opposed to franchise, because I'm just like, you got to know what you're
corporate.
You got to know what you're signing up for. It could be a 5, 10, 15-year journey to be able to get to a point where your royalty stream is sufficient and producing enough to cover your overhead. Otherwise, you're going to be having a lot of headaches on your way through that process. And so just know that you're willing to sort of pack up your bags and take that trip. And some people, hit it much faster, and some people never get to that other side of the, of the chasm. But yeah, that's kind of how we got into franchising. Was in the '08 time frame. We said, hey, if we're going to grow and get more locations, we don't have the money to go open new locations. We don't have the managers, and we want to grow quickly. So franchising is a viable brand expansion strategy if you lack some of those resources.
If you could go back in time, would you have gotten like one significant capital partner, given them equity, and then just grown all those stores yourself in different locations?
So I think I don't think I would have changed anything if I could go back in time, just because, now we're over here on the other side of the abyss, and it seems like things are very, very lucrative, and the business is where we always aspired it could get to. So I wouldn't change anything, because I don't want to mess with the past to change where we are presently. But during those times, if you had asked me that question, I might have said, yeah, this is really hard. I don't know, maybe we should have done it differently. So there were doubts along the way that we questioned, whether we should have gone down the franchising route or whether that was a rabbit hole we were chasing. But eventually it's worked out.
So as a business owner with a company of, this magnitude, I mean, it's a pretty big load to bear, right? And I'd assume that you probably have like a board of advisors or people that you go to on a consistent basis for guidance, counseling, financial advice, business advice, spiritual faith advice. Could you talk a little bit into that and how you manage your stresses on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I think surrounding yourself with a peer group is absolutely critical at every stage of not just business but life. And so I was very fortunate early on in our business. I got involved with a group called the Entrepreneurs Organization. EO is its acronym. And after that, I was probably in that organization for 5 or 6 years. I joined another group called YPO, Young Presidents Organization, that I'm still involved in, still on the board of. And within those organizations, you can get into a smaller group. They call them forums, which are like 6 to 8 members, where it becomes kind of your own mastermind group. You meet on a monthly basis, 3 to 4 hours. You're sharing challenges, not just with business, but also with personal or family challenges, and being able to get kind of an unbiased, confidential feedback mechanism to bounce ideas, challenges, opportunities off of. And so I've been very intentional about making sure I have that resource. I've been very intentional about surrounding myself, as you mentioned, with mentors, people that have kind of made it further than I have or have done things that I aspire to be able to do. And so, having that outlet is really beneficial when you have new opportunities to pursue, but also I'll say more beneficial when things are challenging, like having that forum as an outlet to, vent my concerns, my fears, my anxieties during the COVID era, for example. I don't think I would have been able to get through it on my own, because being a business owner or just a leader in an organization can feel very lonely at times. You feel like you're on an island. You don't have people to talk to or that speak the same language of what you're dealing with. And so I think having that platform is extremely valuable. I've read a lot of the books on meditation, and I can be the first to admit I'm not the best at meditating. I know I need to do it. I'd like to do it more. But even if it's just a couple mindful breaths every day that I remind myself to just kind of settle down, I try to do that if nothing else.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Who is that one person on your board that you feel like has, contributed the most to that health?
I would have to credit my YPO forum. So it's not one person. There's actually 6 other members in our YPO forum, and it's such different business backgrounds and such different, perspectives on life and business that it's almost like the movie. I relate it to the movie Inside Out, where I've got not just my voice in my head now when I'm facing a challenge. I've got those other guys, 6 voices in my head. It's like, okay, how would Sid handle this? How would Phil handle this? How would Colby tackle that? How would Casey deal with this? And so, so these are guys, most of them here local business executives here in Tampa that are hugely successful, but being able to kind of, hear their perspectives in an environment on a monthly basis has allowed me to then have those different frameworks or paradigms as I view challenges as they arise.
Is this YPO forum open to the public?
So YPO, it's an international organization. So is Entrepreneurs Organization. Entrepreneurs Organization, you have to have a business that does over $1 million in revenue. YPO, I believe it's $15 million in revenue and a certain number of employee count, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's local chapters in each market. So there's a YPO Florida chapter that I'm a part of. And then, there's probably about 150 members of YPO Florida, but then you get into a smaller forum group within the chapter as well. And there's other groups, not just those 2. There's other peer groups. Vistage is one. I know here in Tampa, CEO Council is very
CEO
popular.
Council in Tampa Bay, yep.
I know a lot of folks in that organization that speak highly of it, that have, meeting groups as well. So I think it doesn't have to be one of those specific organizations, but something like that can be very valuable.
Very good, very good. So let's, before we kind of close and finish this thing up here, a couple more questions for you. Future goals and plans. You guys have, had a nice long run for the last 20 years, but I'm a firm believer in always having goals, and I assume that you are too. So finishing out this year, what's your biggest goal for this year, and then what's your 5-year goal? So
my biggest goal for this year, in the middle of the year, I wrote down my goals to finish out the year. I've been renovating and / rebuilding my house. We haven't been living in it, but it's been happening for 2 years. So I've been out of my main house for 2 years as it's being rebuilt. So by the end of this year, I want to transition smoothly back into the new house. I feel like we've been limping to the finish line.
And you've got 4 kids.
We've got 4 kids, but we're not like, out on the streets. We've got our own, a house that we're staying in currently.
You're living out of one of the trucks right now.
That's right. But so that's my priority for this year. Long term. And by the way, with regards to that renovation, every time somebody asks me, hey, when are you guys moving back in your house? I think for the past year, I've been telling people 3 months. So I'm going to say it here for your audience to hear. I think I'll be back in my house in the next 3 months. That's my goal. But long-term goal, my priorities have shifted, and I'm glad that I've kind of made this shift, because when I was younger, there was a lot of ego-driven priorities and a lot of priorities driven from what I would say a point of scarcity. Like, I don't have that, I want to go get that. And there's a tendency for especially entrepreneurial-driven individuals, once you get whatever that is, to then say, well, but I don't have that, and point to something further out in the distance and want to move the goalpost. And then you're constantly living your life from a point of scarcity. So I've made this shift, and I made this realization that, like, I've achieved everything I sort of set out to achieve when we started the business, financially, professionally, personally. I think we've got a very purpose-driven, values-based organization that makes an impact and makes people's lives better. I think I've got an amazing family and kids and wife that are just more than I could have dreamed of.
Yep.
And so for me, the next chapter, or actually I just read this book called The Second Mountain, which was really relevant to where I am right now. The next chapter is, trying to make sure that the business continues to be more impactful in the communities that I work and that we touch, to make sure that I continue to become more faithful and spiritual in my life and with my family, and that I do things from a place of abundance. So now that I have, yes, we want to build more. We want to make the business $1 billion enterprise. Why not? But I want to look at it as maximizing my potential while I'm here, maximizing my skills, my team skills, the platform that we have today, and getting it to that next level, but doing it in a way that produces more fulfillment for me, for my family, for my team members, for our clients, where it's not just about trying to put points up on the board. There's a component of it, but if we're doing everything the right way that I just described, the points are going to continue to amass, and that'll be a fun part too.
You know, it's really hard to live out of a sense of abundance when you have little. And it's also, and I think it's a lot easier to do it when you have a lot, but it's also easy to live out of a point of scarcity when you don't have a lot and you also have a lot.
Yeah, but also said another way, I didn't realize this.
I might have tongue twisted that a little bit.
But the more I've obtained, materially, I all of a sudden get surrounded by people who have way more than me that I didn't even know those people existed. People that have their own planes or their own boats or their own, vacation villas or what have you. So like things that weren't even ever on my goal list, all of a sudden
start those become into your picture,
catching my attention. I'm like, oh, well, wait, I don't have that either. But if you think about that, I'm 40, so maybe I got a little bit more than halfway to go. But I don't want to spend the next 40, 50 years of my life just trying to chase something.
The next biggest thing.
The next biggest thing. If those things come, great. But that's that'll be fun.
That's a great point. They're always going to be there.
Always going to be there. And that's what when I think back about it, like I ask myself, like, could I have gotten to where I was if I'd had that mindset in my 20s? And I'll be honest, I don't know, because I was driven by ego and I was driven by, trying to achieve and driven by trying to obtain. But now I'm at this place, I'm like, okay, well, I've gotten and obtained and achieved, and we've done what we set out to do. So take that mindset off, take that mask off, and now can we do something that's more impactful and fulfilling now that I've got, this next runway ahead of me?
Well, you're already making a massive difference in the world. I mean, I read up, you guys have donated over 2 million meals.
It's 4 now.
4 million. Yeah. You've donated over 4 million meals just through by having your company, the charitable thing that you guys do. I think, what is it, 2 meals for every move that you do?
Yep.
Which is absolutely fantastic, which is going to lead me into our closing. Everybody's got core values too. And every person that comes on this podcast, I ask them, what are their core values and how do you prioritize what they are, right? And then a lot of people can be successful, right? But not a lot of people can leave a legacy. So how does Nick Friedman want to leave his legacy?
So our company has 4 core values, which are reflective of my personal values. And those are building leaders, and that's becoming a better leader myself, and then helping others become better leaders as well, so they can then promote new leaders as well. Always branding, which is really about being the best version of yourself at all times. So it's not just about the shameless promotion like we talked about earlier, the publicity, but it's how do you represent yourself in a positive light and help others do that as well. Listen, fulfill, delight, and that's my mindset of like, how can I listen to other people, fulfill and delight them with my interaction, with their interaction with me or my team members or my company, and then create a fun, safe, winning team. So I played a lot of sports growing up. I still love the idea of being a corporate athlete, even though my playing days are long gone. So, how do we create an environment where we're having fun, we're doing it in a safe way, and we are scoring some points and winning and celebrating along the way. So I think those are our core values that we set out as who we want to surround ourselves, how we want to be known for. And then as far as the legacy, I think living out those core values, the legacy will speak for itself. The legacy will be, somebody who was passionate about life, passionate about family, friends, faith, and making a positive impact.
Unbelievable. Nick, thank you so much for coming on our show, brother. If you all want to go ahead and learn more about Nick, you can, I think you have an Instagram. It's going to be Nick Friedman 1. That is his handle, so you can check him out, learn a little bit more about him. And if you want to do some Google research on him, his name is spelled Nick, last name Friedman, Friedman. Nick, we appreciate you, brother. I'm so glad I had the opportunity to learn more about you today, and we appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning into the podcast. If you liked this video, please click the like button and subscribe. This podcast is being produced with the hopes that it will impact the lives of many people throughout the world. For more information on Elevate Health, visit elevatehealthfacilities.com and schedule an appointment with a qualified healthcare professional for any of your desired needs.